Right now, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, a patch of water is quietly getting warmer. That doesn't sound dramatic, but this particular warm patch is about to rearrange the weather for billions of people. Drought on one side of the planet, floods on the other, and a strange calm in the Atlantic. Scientists call it El Niño, and the one building right now could become a super El Nino. Here's what that actually means. Normally, the trade winds blow across the tropical Pacific, from east to west, dragging warm surface water toward Asia and Australia, and leaving cooler water near South America. El Nino is what happens when those winds weaken, and that enormous pool of warm water sloshes back the other way, east across the Pacific, toward the Americas. It's one half of a cycle scientists call ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. La Nina is the cold flip side, and because the Pacific is so vast, when it changes temperature, it doesn't just affect the Pacific, it nudges the entire planet's weather. The ocean, essentially, is in a mood, and the whole atmosphere has to deal with it. So what makes one super? Forecasters watch a specific stretch of the Pacific and measure how far above normal the water is. About 0.5 degrees Celsius above average, sustained, and it's officially El Nino. Push past 2 degrees, and it earns the unofficial title, super or very strong. As of mid-June 2026, that patch is sitting around 1.7 degrees above normal, and still climbing. On the 11th of June, NOAA issued its first El Niño Advisory in roughly 2 years, and the models now give it about a 63% chance of crossing that 2-degree line this autumn. In other words, the coin is weighted towards super. Here's why anyone outside a weather lab should care. A strong El Nino rewrites rainfall across the whole globe. It tends to bring drought to Australia, Indonesia, the Philippines, India, and southern Africa, which means failed crops, water shortages, and wildfire risk. At the same time, it dumps heavy rain and flooding on coastal Peru and Ecuador, parts of East Africa, and southern South America. It even reaches the hurricanes. El Nino tends to suppress Atlantic hurricanes. Good news if you live on the US East Coast, while firing up storms in the Pacific. One warm patch of ocean, and half the world's weather gets a rewrite. This one is forecast to keep strengthening through the autumn and peak over the winter of 2026 into 2027. El Nino events usually do their loudest work in the northern hemisphere winter, then fade through the following spring. So the months to watch are roughly November to February. If it does tip over into super, expected in the headlines, record warm global temperatures, disrupted harvests, and a very busy season for the people whose job is to forecast all of this. And there's a bigger catch. El Nino naturally nudges global temperatures up for a year or so. It releases a burst of stored ocean heat into the atmosphere. Stack that on top of long-term global warming, and El Nino years have a habit of smashing temperature records. The last very strong El Nino helped make its years some of the hottest ever measured at the time. A super El Nino in 2026 wouldn't just move the rain around. It could shove the global thermometer to a brand new high. So keep an eye on the Pacific, a stretch of ocean most people will never see is quietly loading the dice for the coming year's weather, and it's leaning towards super. If you like the science behind the headlines without the jargon, subscribe, and maybe keep an umbrella or a sun hat handy. Depending entirely on which side of the planet you happen to be standing on, mind yourself.